Who's the driver? Uber. That's expensive. Oh, all the way to airline, yeah. We could take turns driving. One person doesn't know this week, and the next two doesn't know this week. I'm at 8:30 on Friday. That's fair. What's Friday night for? That's not bad. That's not. Let's do it.
All right. Everybody going bowling, I hear? Something? Am I invited? No. Okay, so today we're going to talk about defining development. What is development? I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a couple quick updates about the Nicaragua trip. Mostly I will save that for the end of lecture. Just a quick update at the front, and then we'll come back, answer more questions. If anybody's just simply not interested, today I'll go through some pictures from my trip this past March. So I'll talk through it there. So everybody's welcome to stay, but I'm going to reserve that last 10 minutes for if you don't care about the trip and you want to get going, feel free, right? So in general, while we prepare for the Nicaragua trip, I'll try to practice having that as my lecture style, so that if you'd like to see what's going on, you're welcome to stay, or if you're just not going to go and would like 10 minutes early to get lunch or whatever, that'll work. So that'll be my plan for you, just how I'm going to structure the class. That first participation assignment, I decided I'd bump that due date, that's watching that lecture, and then kind of just a quick reflection on what you relate to in terms of moral foundations, to the ethics and considerations of intervention. So that'll be a week from today instead of on Thursday. Okay, so that's kind of the first thing. Then the other thing is, I mentioned in the email that I learned we've got some money that we can help cheapen the program cost. The best way that I can see to do that would kind of help out, I know a lot of you were at least somewhat interested, but also finances are quite difficult with the senior design trip this year or this semester and everything. We have just over $4,200 that I can use to help offset these costs. From what it looked like last week, there might have been 5 or 6 of you planning to go. Several of others maybe could go if the finances were better. So in case this helps, I think we can end up waiving the entire program fee. So it would normally be $500 and then a plane ticket and then whatever else you need to bring in. So there's going to be $10 you have to pay to get into Nicaragua. So in addition to that, you probably want a little bit of spending money, maybe a meal or two out or something, but souvenir kind of stuff. But basically it would be $500 and then a plane ticket, right? It was approximately the cost. So we can hopefully either, if 10 of you come, then there will be an $80 per person program fee. If 9, it would be something like 30. This number is slightly bigger than 4,200. It's like 4,280 or something. But basically, if we had 9 participants, maybe that changes this a tiny bit, not by much. But then it would also, we'd have more money to spread over 9. So if there's 8 or fewer, I think there will be no program cost. So that's my update for you. So I hope that's helpful. I'm excited that I can do at least that. And yeah, so if there's any questions on that, please let me know. I will note, I talked with one of you that was going through the sign-up process, and apparently there's like some art in Ireland fee for $900 right now. I'm in touch with the study abroad program to get that off of our program. So we still have the sign up open through Friday. So I will send you an email as soon as that gets cleared up, because I think that should not be there. We're not going to Ireland and the dates were wrong. So hopefully that'll be cleared up and in place. It will probably, I'll have to check with them, but this will probably be there, and then we'll either refund it or kind of remove that line as soon as I get them to say, hey, take money from this account. Probably have to wait to see how many everybody signs up. So that might be something you have to front that cost at first, and then we'll get a refund or something. I'll work with you as I figure that out. Sorry, this is a little last minute on that, but free money is fun, so we'll give you that. Okay, any questions on that? Okay, so essentially, I hope that the program fee will be waived or paid for by this spare money, or almost all the way so, if not all the way. Okay, so I'll get to share some photos, share some stuff. I know there's some concerns about security and safety while we're there, so definitely we'll cover that as I share some photos. Which, by the way, my feeling is that I feel quite safe there, and I would feel quite safe. I feel quite safe bringing students there, right? And that's potentially a big risk on my part, right? I have this program in France as well, which it's not study abroad, it's like research, so somebody's just traveling as a worker. So it's less responsibility on me, but I kind of feel safer with Nicaragua, just the way things are running, than I do managing or, at that role. And I've got someone like snickering over here, like, yeah, ask Ruth if there was some lack of safety there. I don't know. I think it was pretty safe, but she could have gotten herself into a lot of trouble if she wanted to, right? Like I was not there watching or anything, right? So it's like, okay, anyway. All right, so kind of logistics, but also starting towards our topic for today. I've got a couple ideas for the type of, for the way we can arrange research topics. One would be free for all. You got something that you're particularly interested in, you just name it, you write about it. I haven't posted the instructions just yet, but I will. Essentially, it's going to be a research paper that requires you to look at some scientific articles to base your assessment on, give me some good discussion, what's going on about a particular topic or technology. And we can define it down a little better than just completely free for all, but that's one option, to kind of go for like whatever you kind of feel like. Another option would be, maybe I would generate 10, 15 prompts and say, hey, take one of these, and I would try to associate them with a couple of the group project themes that I'm considering. So specifically, and I'm in contact with a NGO in Nicaragua to see what specifically they would be interested in, but I already know that one topic would be getting some advanced knowledge of groundwater, like where to drill a well, dig a well, drill a well, to get good water, where's the water table expected, in the absence of good geographic information. So in the States, we've got USGS, we've got all sorts of information sources. A lot of our area, we have some data to pull from to say, oh, what's this geologic formation? What's the aquifer like in this area? Lots of resources like that are not necessarily so available. And even still in the States, it's sometimes a bit of a gamble. You drill, you hoping that it's makes, what you've plotted and charted from nearby wells would match, but you're not fully sure. So it's always a bit of a gamble or a bit of guesswork there. But groundwater info without, or we'll say with limited geologic info. I think we talked about these last time. Another option could be potential for ion exchange or other cost-effective means to deal with the groundwater if you do end up getting too much sulfur or something like that. It's maybe good water, but it tastes bad, right? How do you handle that? And then another topic that I'm thinking of that I know would be very helpful for them is sort of an educational project in a sense, and this would tie in pretty well with what we'll do down there, to educate locals on, hey, you normally, they used to perhaps get water and collect it from rainwater from different sources and collect it and store it in a 55-gallon drum. And it would be open, and if we visit communities, you'll see this a lot. Just be an open drum, it's got water, and they would like dish from that to use for drinking, for cooking, for whatever. And they'll do that in part because the risk of not having water is significant. At least for most of their lives it has been. What if the water runs dry? What if, maybe there was a well, maybe there is a well somewhere, but it doesn't always work. Or in the dry season, yeah, it's good to have some water set aside. So even with a pretty well-run, pumped, piped, deep well system that should hopefully not fail, or could be repaired pretty quickly if so, even then they're still using that when it would be better in terms of hygiene and health for them to use the tap. Maybe they could store some water for their own peace of mind, right? And here's kind of where we get to that combo between social and technical aspects here. Maybe it would be good peace of mind, but they first use the tap instead of first use that, right? Especially for drinking. Maybe if they're boiling something, okay, a little bit of leaf matter is going to be cleaned up by the boiling or something. But some sort of educational material on water storage and use. So this type of project could be, for a research article on the writing side, as an individual, you would be like taking maybe a look at who has studied this, who has studied like that storage effects, or maybe somebody takes on the technological aspect of what kind of technologies could you use to prevent that issue from being a problem. Something like that, whereas as a group, the project would perhaps generate a presentation and perhaps some sort of educational pamphlet that we could give to them to translate and use in their work. So we'll just say educational material on water storage. There's probably some other topics like this, not just water storage. I just know that's one of them. Okay, show of hands. How many of you feel like free-for-all is the way to go? Okay, nobody. How about being told what to do? Everybody likes being told what to do, even though I phrased it that way. Okay, all right. So I will work to give you some prompts there. I'm happy to work with you on that. In some classes in the past, I had like 30 to 40 students, and I don't feel like I did this process too well with them, but it was also probably too much for me to create 40 different prompts. But I think with you guys, I could do that. All right, so I will aim for that, and please give me feedback along the way if you look at them and say, what about something in this type of topic, right? What I'll try to do is set this up for approximately these three bigger categories, but maybe something else will catch my attention and I'll offer some other stuff. I don't feel like your individual research papers need to relate to the group project, but I think that might help. So that's kind of my thinking. All right, so you've all done at least a little bit of participation so far, and now I'm going to make you do a lot more. All right, so what is the goal of development? It's discussion time. So let's all, I'm going to do a little exercise to get your vocal cords working. I'm just going to have you count to 5 with me, okay? Just out loud. All right, I'm going to start at 0 and then you start at 1. Okay, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, now you've all talked, so now you can do it, right? Just randomly doing that on the fly. Okay, so what is the goal of development? Okay, benefit. What kind or to who?
Developed countries
Okay, so benefit of resources.
I would say a caveat to that be benefits and resources for all, for the general population, not just for.
Yep. Good. So there's an element of, okay, what kind of benefit, and there's also an element of to who, right? And part of that being that everyone benefits is part of the goal. Okay, what else?
Improvements, lifestyle or something.
Okay, yeah. So improved lifestyle. What else? Why do we want clean water? Health. There we go. Good. That obviously kind of falls under benefits in a way, and having health lends to improved lifestyle. So this is not, we're not trying to be an exact definition, just sort of brainstorming and getting these thoughts flowing here. What else? Why else do we care about development, or what is the goal of development?
You have resources and you're healthy and you have a decent lifestyle, you have more chances for opportunity.
Opportunity is a fantastic one.
I think go into education.
Yeah. So opportunity, I can't write and talk and think at the same time. Opportunity is something we will definitely focus quite a bit on. I think that is extremely important, and it absolutely relates to education, even health. If you're healthy, you can get more opportunities or make use of more opportunities that you do have. Very good. What else? Or maybe other ways to summarize it. Think of maybe how the United States developed, right? 400 years ago looks a lot different than 200 years ago, looks a lot different than today, right? What if we were to design something, what would be the goals to progress?
Like technology.
Technology may be one of them, right? And that's something that ties into a lot of so maybe we could say technology access or something like that. I don't know if access is the right word, but technology definitely, and it ties into a lot of the opportunity, ties into health, ties into lifestyle. When we let's see, I think we'll come to it later in our discussions today, but part of that is you can save time. That's lifestyle. That's ties into a lot. That's a way to measure that. All right. Why are we motivated to help a country or even a community or a family or a person to develop? Like what does that mean, or why do we care?
So we have empathy.
Okay, so part of the and I didn't quite structure this quite well, but we'll say motive now that I asked for the motive. Having empathy means that we care for somebody on their behalf. We sense what their hopes, their dreams, their suffering, whatever it is, and that's motivating because we feel something for them, right? Empathy means we're gonna have positive emotions when that person that we are empathizing with is doing well, right? There's or perhaps sadness when they're not doing well, right? So that's a big motivator, and it's perhaps something that we might define as, part of it. What we might try to think of is like, well, it's a good thing to do, right? So, well, what is good, right? And that kind of ties in there. Anything else on goals for development?
I'd say maybe also like having an organized community in a sense, where it's not just like little patches of people and nothing can get done because no one's working together. Development, like to also create a sense of community that can work with each other.
Yeah. So if we think about what anarchy looks like, that's probably anti-development, right? Because of exactly that. If we can work together and perhaps have common agreement on things, then we are better able to prosper in general. So you'll notice almost all of these are relating in some way to a general sense of prosperity, of human thriving, we could say. So I'll add that. Okay, what else might be a part of that?
I think kind of opposite of empathy for the motive. Not opposite, but like a different approach would also be that if you improve the developing countries, then they're going to need to rely on the developed countries less and less. Or like if you could improve a country that might be a little unsafe, people aren't going to have to like flee and take refuge in another place.
Yeah.
So it's like more than like the resources are distributed and like everyone's gonna have a nice life.
There's value in some ways self-reliance. And the reason I think you started to say maybe opposite of empathy is there might be a knee-jerk reaction if you're saying something like, if you're telling someone or some group or some nation or whatever that you need to be self-reliant, that might sound unempathetic. But what you're saying, and this actually goes really well to the moral foundation stuff, right? Like what you're concerned about is that they can do well and do well for themselves. Maybe the generosity dries up one day or something, right? Regardless of what's happening, like that would be good for them to have the self-reliance. So I don't think that's counter to empathy. I think that in some way falls into this organization is that capacity for self-governance, self-reliance, growth from within kind of thing. That's a good one. I'm not sure exactly how to summarize that. Let's see. We'll say and we'll use a very fancy science word, endogenous growth. Just meaning that they can, from within that person, that family, the nation, whatever, to be able to get resources from within to improve, right? That's one of the goals for development. I like that. One thing that also relates to is if they are, if we achieve a country, let's say a country achieves a state where they are pretty self-reliant, they are capable of implementing technologies and managing their communities well and kind of in some harmony, they're going to tend to not need to extract so many resources from the environment, at least not in harmful ways, right? So even though human thriving requires extraction of resources, that's just going to happen. And that's going to be part of the tension we talk about with the moral foundations, right? That's part of living, and part of the ethics of working in an environmental field is to recognize that's part of living. To eat something requires something's going to die. even if you're harvesting plants, you're going to probably be killing animals as you harvest the plants, right? So there's a lot of environmental harm that happens, but can we minimize that? Can we engineer systems that are preserving, that are managing, that are conserving, right? There's a lot of stuff that can go into that. If we achieve a situation where people have enough shelter and fuel and heat or air conditioning or whatever, those needs, the energy, without cutting down trees, that's better than the time when they have to cut down trees for all that, right? So there is improvements in environmental management. One thing that we might be able to see through a lot of this is actually something that, as a technology engineer type of person, it's easy to lose sight of, but I think is a very important issue with a lot of this stuff, is a reasonably functioning legal system, which means basically less corruption. So if we can have less corruption in anything that is involved with that organization of the society, that's also probably a goal for development. Okay, so in general, we want to do good of some sort, right? Like that's kind of the gist of it, but what is good?
Depends on who you are, I guess.
Who you are? Who you ask?
Huh?
It depends on who you are, you said? Okay, so there's some subjective element, maybe. But if it's subjective, if it depends on who you are, then does that still meet the definition of good? Actually, I haven't looked at the definition. It might be interesting. What's that?
I was just saying, I don't know what it is either. I was thinking about it.
Yeah.
Like, what the actual definition would be.
I'll describe it as maybe a virtue that positively influences someone's life or something.
Some sort of positive influence. On someone or something. Okay. Any other ideas?
Would maybe add to that and say like without causing harm to someone or something else in the process.
Okay. Without harm. Yeah, because it wouldn't be good to steal something, even though I might think that I'm now richer because I stole $10 from you. Yay, good for me, but that's not overall good, right? So there's some aspect there that brings in to society. So something that's also a net benefit for society. So if I buy, well, let's say I'll sell you something for $10, I get that $10, but maybe I didn't need that thing, or maybe I made it so that I could sell it. And that's good for me and good for you because now you have something you wanted, right? So even that transaction, that is better captured in that framework of that's something good, maybe, right? What else?
Whatever the average criteria is something better than that.
Okay, so anything better than the average, almost. Okay, so and that's less, perhaps less moral and more like kind of a like, oh, that was a good dinner, right? Like a quality type thing. So quality that is greater than average, like that. Yeah, so we use the word in a lot of different ways. So if we're thinking about, what is, we want to do good, and I think that's where I was originally like thinking about this, and we'll read through it, the foreword to our book. I'll pull that up in a minute. And I think that part of it's like, oh, we want to do good, right? And so to do good, well, I mean, and in a way, like to achieve, if we take a look at the average quality of life, for example, in a country, and we improve that, and now it's better than average or better than it was, yeah, maybe we did good there, right? So that would be a way to describe that. Yeah, in a sense, okay, so I'm gonna use a Bible example for a moment, but I'm gonna say pretend for a moment like God doesn't exist. Okay, just imagine whatever you believe. Just assume it doesn't exist. So we're gonna then think about what I'm gonna say in the framework of, instead of God, it's like some ultimate thing that we just look at to, the absolute, some sort of absolute, like this is the best thing we could achieve, right? The highest goal, okay, that we could place good. So there's a story in the Bible where somebody comes up to Jesus, who's supposedly the Son of God, right? But we're gonna, he's a historical figure, so let's just assume that God doesn't exist, right? We're gonna take it that approach. Somebody comes up and says, "Good teacher," and then his response is, "What do you mean good? Like nobody's good but God. Nothing is good except that highest attempt, that highest aim at what could be," right? If you look at it from that framework, maybe when we say we want to do good, it's almost impossible to even think about how much of that society stuff actually comes into place. And that suggestion from that passage is kind of like, nobody's able to just simply be good. But to aim to do good is another thing, right? And to orient yourself or our efforts towards something that is productive, is helping people, exactly like we were saying, without harm to other people or society, that's maybe a definition. Does that kind of make sense? Okay, so I really like the way you guys all kind of filled that in, because it just, yeah, that works really well. Okay, so what is prosperity? Maybe we kind of defined it when we're defining development up here, but
I feel like it's economic, but also like mental.
okay.
You can have economic prosperity where you have money to buy things you need, but also mental prosperity, like not happy with your life. If you have money, then you're not prosperous.
Yeah, I like that. So it's more than, I mean, money is part of it, but there's more to it than that, right? You might find people that really feel like their life is so enriched just by having a quality relationship with their family and friends or something, right? A meaningful life, well lived, is prosperity in and of itself, right? There certainly are aspects of our culture, something that might elevate one part or the other. So it's oftentimes we think of just money, income or wealth or any of that. But I agree. I think there's a lot more to it than that. So what other aspects can you think of? Did I just name them all? I mean, I think we all kind of just named them all in a sense. Have health, things that allow you to, technologies maybe that allow you to spend more time doing what you want. In part of the goal of development, and what I'll say part of perhaps what prosperity in part looks like, or maybe some aspect of it, or something that guarantees that you have opportunity for prosperity, would be something that our founding fathers made quite a big deal out about, right? Life, liberty, and it's not happiness, but the pursuit of, So the freedom to pursue stuff, whatever you think might make you happy. And it's really that pursuit and these freedoms here, maybe we just could summarize it as freedom. If you're not free, then you're not very prosperous, right? And you can also think of this in terms of, well, who is the least prosperous in societies? And if you think about that for a little while, well, there's certainly going to be people that have the least economic wealth, but you might also put in there people that have good economic wealth but have very, very difficult mental states or emotional states. People might be afflicted with something, might be having a monetarily rich but very spiritual, emotional, mental health type poverty. Maybe they're addicted to drugs in trying to deal with that, and maybe they take their own life. That's not a prosperous life, even if they have $1 million, whatever, right? So there's a lot of aspects there. And then if you think about, again, thinking about what is not prosperity, any time where people are have had their freedoms removed, right? That could be somebody imprisoned, right? And maybe that's the just thing in some cases. Or if you have a falsely accused person or something that's been imprisoned wrongfully, that's totally unprosperous, right? It's not even just that that's the situation, right? You think about slavery or trafficking, human trafficking, right? There's lots of situations where people have so little freedom that it is like there's not even the base things there needed to feel like you're prospering. And part of that is because we think of prosperity, I think this way, that we'll talk more about this, but there's the ability to pursue something that you want to, that you find meaningful. And now maybe in our own lives, maybe we don't always do that. Maybe we procrastinate or whatever. Sometimes, which maybe we want to, right? but there are things that, like, it's not to say that we are pursuing happiness or we are happy. It's just that freedom, that part of it seems to be important as well. Okay, so let's shift a little bit and talk about global health. And I think I have a slide or two on this. Well, just a second. Hold that thought. Okay, sorry, I mixed up my slides just a bit. We already talked about what is good. Now, I wanted to read. We'll come back to global health in a moment, but I want to read the foreword to our book here, and I need to pull that up for us. All right. Set my way. Okay, so this is the start of our book, and I'm going to give you 2 minutes to take a look at that, and then I'll kind of read it with you. Can you see that? Is that big enough? Okay. So, peace falls under the general umbrella of many things: freedom, democracy, human rights, the alleviation of suffering, and the improvement of environmental quality and health. Yet it is global health that connects us all. And so this is obviously describing global health and kind of as an introduction to our book. And I'd like to discuss this and maybe even offer a little bit of a critique once we move on with it. So global health can be found in a small child in Mali learning to wash her hands to prevent the spread of diarrheal disease. It appears in the work of a community erecting a water storage tank in the mountains of western Honduras village, or members pouring concrete slabs used for latrines in Timor-Leste. Global health is also present in groups of women constructing more efficient cooking stoves in Asia that not only reduce the indoor air pollution, but also make better use of scarce tree resources. From these seemingly simple beginnings, global health broadens its reach to affect the prosperity and stability of whole nations, whether empowering communities to better educate and provide for themselves, stopping a rapid outbreak of illness, preventing famine, or eliminating socially and economically devastating disasters. Having access to basic needs of water, sanitation, hygiene, and shelter are issues of human rights, not just issues of development and engineering. Providing these basic rights in a sustainable manner is critical if we are to improve the health of poor people afflicted with disease, people who are often isolated, forgotten, ignored, and without hope. You can see some of the moral foundations here, right? If you've started to look into that lecture, you can kind of sense there's a lot of good concern for people, impoverished people, right? And that's very motivating to what we do. If you examine engineering closely, it is about solving problems. Engineering is also tied to eradicating poverty and disease, just as much as it is tied to planning, design, and construction. One key, though, is to provide engineers and others with resources so they understand the beneficial use of appropriate technology. This type of technology is developed and deployed with ongoing input from local communities to accommodate economic, social, environmental, and cultural conditions unique to each locale. Such an approach holds greater promise of fostering healthy communities and reducing gender inequalities. One principle of the Carter Center is that people improve their lives when provided with the necessary skills, knowledge, and access to resources. What is special about this book is that it provides all of these so that people can improve the lives of their families, their communities, and their countries. I'm proud to see so much of the knowledge of this book is created by those who serve the U.S. Peace Corps as water sanitation engineers. Well, I'll just finish. Many do not know that my mother also served in the Peace Corps as a health volunteer like the child in Mali. She has been an inspiration to me. Only after global health is improved will we all be connected in a world of peace and equality. That's from President Jimmy Carter. Okay, so we'll talk a little more specifically about some of that, but that's kind of the foreword to our book. We talked a little bit about what is good. Any more thoughts on that as he defines it? Okay. Is world peace a good goal? Okay, get some yes.
It's a good goal, but it's sort of unattainable. It's more of a dream.
So a good goal. Is it so? And I like that distinction there. More like a good dream. Is there a distinction between a dream and a goal?
A goal is something that you can actually achieve, but a dream is something that you can't. Centuries can pass, but it will never come true.
Okay, so actually, that ties in pretty well with what I was mentioning about like the idea that no one is good, right? Except that perfect image of what is best, like something that is transcending humans to the point where it's no longer subjective, right? And I didn't come back to that, but actually that comment on it kind of depends on who's asking in terms of what is good. That is, while very practically true, it's helpful if we can identify something that would transcend that, right? That's something that could unify us, whether or not we believe in a God or whatever. It's like something, if we could dream about it, like world peace, then perhaps that's a good way to orient, right? So there's something quality about that, even if this is questionably attainable or more simply a vision of what things could be like. And my own opinion is generally in agreement that it's unlikely that people are going to achieve this. It's even capitalized here, right? It's a world peace. Like, that's a thing that people talk about. Have you ever achieved peace with all of your friends and family? Right, so there's no world peace. So there's going to be conflict because people are people. That's going to happen. Now, perhaps, so it's probably not quite reasonable. Anybody think that, well, let's see. Is it a reasonable goal? That's the question on here.
I think it's a little more reasonable when you look at it from a global health perspective to say that if we make the majority or all people have this like basic level of living that is improved from what it once was, I guess that in a way is kind of world peace because it sets people up to not fight and struggle over resources and stuff. But
Right.
it's traditional definition.
Yeah, I like that as something. If we can remove struggle for resources, that tends to help quite a bit. So partly reasonable, or elements of it, not necessarily reasonable in a sense that we should go so far as to kill somebody in order that world peace should survive, should happen, because that's not a very peaceful solution, right? So probably not reasonable if we are going to be coercive about achieving it, right? That's kind of the opposite. But I say that because it could easily become something where you get convinced of the goal, and then you feel so strongly about the goal that you decide that XYZ actions are important, and then you sort of ramping them up because you care so much, and you're trying to make something work trying really hard towards it, to the point where you end up violating the same moral foundation that you were trying to achieve, right? So there's some aspect of it that might not be, that could become unreasonable, we'll say, right? Perhaps we'll just say, if not coercive, or something like that. That's not how you spell coercive. Don't need this. And so it's kind of a maybe, kind of a yes, kind of a sometimes not so much, right? It's interesting. Okay, so now the part of this, in part of this, it says, let's see, where do we go? Yeah, only after global health is improved will we all be connected in a world of peace and equality. Now, of peace means it's just a descriptor, right? And of equality means that's a descriptor. So that sounds pretty good. But do you think that's reasonable or achievable? Might have to actually talk about what is equality, and I think my next slide will touch on that a little bit. What are your thoughts?
I definitely think world peace is not the same as a world of peace. I don't know why, but I get that feeling.
Yeah.
That makes a difference.
Yeah.
I think world peace implies like a kind of totality to it, like everyone is peaceful.
Yeah.
World of peace is like, most things are peaceful.
Right. I don't even know if I caught that until I was rereading it just now. So that, like, I think that is because you can be, let's say, you could say you are a man or a woman of peace, but that might also mean you still, let's say there's a rabid raccoon and you have some weapon to keep it away from your children. You're going to be a violent person in that moment to try to get that raccoon away and achieve safety, achieve peace. Being a person of peace could, in that sense, entail some violence, right? In that silly example. But as a descriptor, that I think that's much better. That's how you would describe it. In a world of equality, meaning that the equality is valued, and that they're, in describing it that way also kind of leaves room for the fact that sometimes it's not going to happen, but it's available to happen, right? That's probably a little more important and better to phrase it that way than if you were to say, and it maybe with the phrasing and stuff, it's a little questionable, because I would say, if you were to pursue world peace and pursue world equality, then you probably look a little bit like this. How do you do it? You force it, right? Now, if we were to take all of us in the room and say, we need equality today. Well, let's start with a very simple metric, okay? Let's talk about height, okay? I think I'm the tallest one in the room, so the first thing we need to do is find who's the shortest and cut my legs off accordingly to make me that short. If we're going to achieve equality of height, right? That's part of equality, right? So there's obviously some silly element here that's like, we can't be Thanos, right? We don't want to be Thanos. There's a reason that's a villainous thing to do, is to, for the sake of some perceived moral good, or to achieve that world peace or to achieve equality. I'd like to keep my ankles, please. I have had friends that I play basketball with that would tease me and say, like, that's what they're going to do to make it fair. But yeah, it's just not a super pleasant thought, right? We don't actually want that. That's not something that is good. But as we think about kind of the different moral foundations and things like that, I'm not saying that we shouldn't have the opportunity for that. We are all, in the sense of it, dealt a different hand of cards, right? Genetically, environmentally, there's a lot of things. So the more we can do to provide a fair instead of a rigged card deck, or fair, equal access to opportunities, that is better, but it can't come at the cost of that infamous, deletion of people or whatever, right? It can't be coerced in that sense. We can strive for everyone having the same chances. That still also falls into, to a certain degree, there are going to be impossible circumstances. There are going to be people born into very, very difficult situations, and some not so much. And that's where a lot of our, I think, modern emphasis on privilege and things like that, there's some truth in that people have different opportunities, and that's really important. And can we improve opportunities for people who lack them or didn't have them, right? The answer is not to cut off my legs because I happen to grow taller, right? And redistribute my legs or something, right? We could also think about that. Everybody gets part. No thanks. It just doesn't work. Some things we could say it works that way, but if it's, we need to be careful about how we're approaching that from that moral framework. And perhaps to an extent, there's social programs that we can agree on to say, okay, yes, I agree. You should take some of my money, taxes, and help provide for somebody who needs it. But that should become an agreement rather than a Thanos, right? Okay. So I meant to, I'm sorry, I think I confused my slides a little bit. we already talked a bit about prosperity, so I'm going to flip back to that. We said there's economic, there's mental, there's life, liberty, pursuit of happiness as kind of underpinning things. So on a wider sense, in what ways do you feel prosperous? We'll add just regular, generic health too.
Opportunities we have, like getting a good education.
Fantastic. And thank you for the compliment. No, that's exactly right. So opportunities, that includes things like education. What other opportunities do you have that you see? So opportunity for, and we could even call it leisure, right? The opportunity, I think that's backwards. The opportunity to spend some time doing something that is just simply fun or exploration or enriching in some way, right? If you had to work 9 hours in the day just to have food and then some extra time to maintain your house, that you don't have very many opportunities for leisure, right? So that is a fantastic opportunity that you have, and that we would say is part of prosperity, right? What else?
I think it kind of goes with opportunities for like convenience.
Yeah.
Not only having access to basic needs, but having access to basic wants and just easy access to it as well.
Yeah. That's exactly right. I like that. We said freedom earlier too. Yeah, so access to convenience, access to stuff. I would even, I guess part of health and these other things would be just general safety and hygiene. In Louisiana, we probably actually have some sensitivity to this, but with flooding. But when's the last time you felt like you wouldn't have a place to live, right? In Louisiana, yeah, or maybe on the whole, I mean, it's not earthquakes, but there's sometimes some risk there. But in general, you don't think too hard about that. There are moments in those moments, maybe that year, you recognize this is not a prosperous year, right? My house flooded. This is awful, right? Everybody is suffering, but thankfully there's opportunity and to recover from that, things like that. Anything else?
Kind of along with freedom and opportunity is like you get the ability to like choose what you want to do in like a lot of different areas of your life.
Yeah.
Like you can choose like your religion because they're like every different religion is in that rouge like around us. So
Yeah.
you can figure out what you want or like different things, like make choices of like what you want to like do for a living.
Yeah.
Like in some places, I think you have to like do what your family does or.
Yeah. So part of this is even a lot of liberty in the sense of culture, norms, and things like that.
Like also, I think like at least in America, there's more freedom to move like classes. There's some societies that have like a caste system or things like that.
Yeah. So some would maybe call that economic mobility, but there's also social mobility there. It's a very good point. And in fact, one of the ways we might ensure that prosperity is kind of happening or development goals are achieved is in some sense mobility in those ways. And that actually might be less on the engineering side of things and more on the social side of things, in terms of, like, I guess, engineering a society that allows for social and economic mobility would be very important. And it's the mobility, I mean, in some sense, you're thinking just like, well, the fact that you're up on the hierarchy of economics or social status kind of stuff. But that freedom and the ability to move on it is also something that is very valuable, right? That you can aspire to something. If you had no way of aspiring to be anything more than you are today or yesterday, then that's kind of defeating, right? We take value there. Okay. Any other thoughts?
Maybe like relationships with friends and family, having an overall like sense of community with those around you.
Love it. Yeah. Very good. All right, so we can definitely find a few more, but I'm going to try to summarize this with one concept that I learned from the foreword of a different book, actually. On our recommended reading list, I put The Rational Optimist by Matt Ridley. Somebody else, and I need to go back and figure out who that was, wrote a foreword for the book, and he talked specifically about a definition for prosperity of time saved. And so my little thing here is, in a way, we can sum almost all of this down into time saved. And when I say that, I mean this is not just like, oh, I don't have to spend as much time doing X, Y, Z. It's, oh, I can spend my time with my loved ones. I can spend my time, I can live a longer life and have more time seeing my children and maybe their children and so on. Spending time with family, whatever. It's that ability to, it kind of incorporates everything. If we think about it like safety and hygiene, you're not going to be sick, you're going to be protected. You can spend more time not worrying about those issues. You can spend, if you have convenient access to health or access to health in general, healthcare, that gives you a better likelihood of not being sick, not being unwell. If you spend your life unwell for whatever reason, that's a less prosperous life. Now, doesn't mean you can't be prosperous. Let's say you did amputate my legs. I'll find a way to have a prosperous life, right? Sorry for the gory examples today. I'll find a way to, especially if I have these other opportunities of good community and things like that, hopefully I would find a way, right? And then that would be, so it's not to say that you can't have prosperity, but to have that, to have those opportunities. So this is a way to notice, no matter where you are, who you are, whatever in life allows you more of those freedoms to choose, more of the opportunities to grow. In some sense, time saved is a big factor there. And something that we talked about earlier but didn't catch this time again is technology often plays a big role in that. A dishwasher can save you a lot of time, or a washer and dryer for your clothes can save quite a lot of time, right? And when you scale different technologies like that, we get to a point where the way to be prosperous is less and less required on other people's labor, right? It's not that labor is bad, but one thing you'll notice is, this is I'm just going to throw this out here and then share about Nicaragua. So I'll end on a little controversial note, maybe. Food for thought, and we can discuss more later. If it were not for technology, we probably would still have slavery in most societies, if not all, because the way to be prosperous is to save time. And if you don't have enough productive stuff, the way people will do that is to make use of somebody else's time, right? And probably forcefully so. Not saying that's right. I'm just saying I think humanity is such that that's what happens, and so we'll leave there for the moment something to think about, and the role of technology in improving lives across the world is pretty significant, I think. Okay, so from here, I'm gonna talk you through a few pictures from my trip last March. Hopefully address some concerns if there are any remaining concerns. One was safety, and I definitely want to talk about that. These are just the pictures I took, so you'll just see a bit of whatever I happen to want to take a picture of. So yeah, I'll hit topics along the way. Feel free to stop me, ask me about stuff, interrupt me. Feel free to leave if you want to. But we've got 12 more minutes, so we'll go through a few. So this is the bus ride from Managua to Chinandega, just kind of in Managua proper. This was kind of outside the city a bit, just some of the landscape. March is the dry season, so it gets very lush and green in the other seasons. I've only ever been in like March, April time, so I've only ever seen it in the dry season. So more landscape. There are individual rooms for adults, or like, I'm not allowed to share a bedroom with students, like just that's LSU policy. So I have my own room like that. You'll see there will be kind of dorm style sort of things. I have a couple pictures of those in a minute. Juntos is Spanish for together, and so they'll give us shirts if you're going. It'll probably be something like that, and that the way we'll wear them on our travel, and that way they'll kind of all know like who's going where. Meals, typically this is one of the breakfasts there. I don't know if I already ate some or just wasn't feeling very hungry that morning, but there's a fair amount of food. I think in general for lunches, it's usually you pack PBJ. So if there are people with peanut allergies, severe peanut allergies, that might actually be a problem. So let me know, and we'll see if we can navigate that. But they have that as a warning on their thing. But they serve hot breakfast, hot dinner typically, and we kind of do a picnic style thing for lunch. And because we're going to be not following their typical script exactly with our water quality assessments and stuff, we're not going to participate exactly with all of the stuff, but they usually have groups come in and say, okay, you and you are on dishes this day and that day to kind of help the flow of things. So we'll probably participate in some of that to help with the procedures of the facility. But we'll navigate that when we're there. So this is a fun one. We were going to go hike the volcano, and I just thought it was kind of fun that we had a couple of cattle drawing a cart here that I just struck my funny bone that it got tail lights and wheels, and just typical Nicaragua experience here. A lot of the major roads are actually very well paved, and commenting on safety. There are a few dirt roads and things, but travel is pretty slow there, and we don't travel a whole lot on them. Most of the major roads are actually one of the things that Nicaragua has invested in is their infrastructure in terms of roadways. They actually also recently, within the past 10 years, got electrification throughout most of the country, so that's really impressive. Speaking of opportunity and things like that, access to electricity. So this is driving up to Cerro Negro. I don't think that's it. Here it is. The fun way is to just climb straight up, and that's my plan. There's a back way, so it's less steep and less frustrating. Probably less hot too, but the fun way is just to go straight up. So and the most fun way is coming back down, because then it's almost like you're moonwalking, because you like take a step and you just like sink, and so you don't want to take a tumble. You're not gonna be, it's not gonna be a complete disaster. You might get scraped up if you take a tumble, but it's fun. And you get gravelly rocks in your shoes, and then like, you know, your tennis shoes will still have black dust in them a month later if you're still wearing them. Plan to take some shoes that are potentially sacrificial. Okay, so some more pictures going up. This is Brian Peters. He's the guy we'll be in touch with. I think I'll have him Zoom into our class at some point to give some discussion. Here's from the top of the volcano. It's not it looks quite tall, but I think it's like 800 or 1,000 feet elevation. So it's intense, but it's not like climbing a real mountain intense. It's like half hour, 45 minutes to an hour of intense, and then you're there, kind of thing. Or a nice little hike, a couple miles or something. There are people that go on these tourist things where they suit up in these orange jumpsuits and then sled down it on these little boards. The jumpsuits are so you don't get torn up if you fall off. And so almost always there'll be a group that brings us up, and then you just see them sliding down. It's quite entertaining. I think one of the world record downhill biking speed was set going down this, and unfortunately the guy's bike fell apart towards the end, and so he just about fell apart. He was very injured, but he survived. So you could look that up if you're interested. So this is like the inside of the volcano, the active part. It's not active in like explodey boom kind of active. It's just like shoots a little steam and stuff. So here's the people that are sledding down it. Let me go back one. I think you can see maybe people sliding. Yeah, there's somebody sliding. So just zooming on down. All right, so there's a local pizza place called Pizza Maria. We'll probably go there at some point. They serve fried cheese, which is delicious. And this is me goofing around with Brian. He took a few pictures for me. So, okay. So in March, I took this little UV disinfection thing that's designed for from Aquasense. If any of you knew or know Andrea Martinez, my recent graduate student, she just got her master's recently. She works for Aquasense now, and so she might actually join us, which would be really cool. Anyway, I took one of their products down there. Usually you hook it up into the piping and in line with everything, but we were testing that out a bit. All right, I'm gonna speed up a little so we get to the compound photos. Here are some wells that we found in a community that were put in by Living Water, some other organization, and reasonably maintained, but they weren't providing a particular community enough water, so we were actually there to kind of talk with them about maybe a new water project. I don't think they're going to, but. So one day we were going out to do a bit of field work and see some places, so this is Chinandega proper. They have like a big roundabout. That's the decoration in the middle of it. This is us riding in the back of a truck to our destination. So this is digging the pipes or digging trenches for the pipes. So that morning we just went out and helped refill some of this. So if we do manual labor, it kind of looks something like that. But that'll probably be optional or whatever. Any of you know Gabrielle Langlois? She was a student here recently. This was one of her friends from New Orleans High School. So anyway, friend of a former student was working down there. She might be there. She was an intern there for most of this past year, working on septic systems. But I don't know. So more of the countryside here. Here's the septic systems I was talking about. I took a lot of photos because we're trying to just think about what to do with the clay soil, how deep we need to dig, trying to troubleshoot some of that. Cool little dog we found. Countryside. Here's a few pictures of an illicit gold mining operation. Here's the gold mining happening. all the bags of soil and whatnot. So there's probably direct mercury discharge straight into there. And I was taking the photos to try to show like, this is the creek that the water is going through. You can't really see it behind that, but there's a small creek or small river creek right there. Okay, so here's a couple photos from the actual compound. So there's a very large pavilion in the middle of it to provide some nice shade for the daytime. What you can see through this area is all within the compound. In fact, these tall trees are all within the compound here. So it's a pretty good space. There's a spot on the roof that we can hang out. I have a couple more photos, and I'm going to show you there's like 20-foot concrete walls, and the enclosure is like the whole compound is completely enclosed with like metal gates and doors with security guards. So safety-wise, I meant to talk about this. The compound itself is quite safe. Anytime we're out on a trip with people, we're going to have locals and people that work for Amigos that know Spanish and English that can translate with us. So we're always going to be with the Amigos people. We're not going to go out on our own, maybe to Chinandega for like a meal or something, but even then we'll probably have someone join us. So it's very little safety concerns in terms of what we're out doing. And there has been a little civil unrest for the past few years, but most of that's kind of near Managua. Worst case, it might block a highway, but they said they've not had any issues within the past year or so, and things have settled down since it was bad in like 2020-ish before. Okay, here's one of the well and water systems that Amigos set up, and we were troubleshooting with some chlorine. Here's their chlorine dosing system. We've got a chlorine tank here metered into their system, and that pipes it over to their pipe there. This is a cool tree. It looks a lot more impressive in person because it's a tree, but it's very large. And like, if I were to be standing next to it, like this, I'd probably be like right here. It's a just huge root mass and stuff. I don't know. It was cool. We'll probably do some bacterial counting, and this is kind of what it looks like with the little system we'll bring. Each of those little bubbles is like a bacteria colony. So we'll filter water through a little filter and then grow the colonies that way. Here's where we were testing the chlorine. The chlorine actually enters this system right here, and they were putting that in, and I had some chlorine testing kit with me. You can see the color change based on the chlorine content. More food and more septic tank systems. We were trying to do a percolation test. There's a snake in that picture. This is a installation of a modern bathroom in a community, starting of it. This was a really interesting well. Somebody hand dug this well. He lived on the top of a hill. He dug straight through that rock hill, probably 90 or 100 feet or more, by himself. We asked him how long it took. He said, 3 months, just me, all day, every day, kind of thing. So, and this is with what's called a pila. It's like a metal rod with like a spike. And so you just like crush the rock and then bring it up. The sad part is there's a tiny bit of water down there, but it wasn't good. And so he never found water. And so and the good thing is, I know, it's like absolutely crazy. And it was impressive on so many levels. And this family actually, they owned a lot of cattle and livestock, so it was clear that they were pretty rich. And when I saw that work ethic, I was like, I think I know why. Willing to do that and having the time and whatever, like, wow. So they're actually going to use this as a septic pit instead for their modern bathroom. So they were happy to be able to use it. They just wanted us to get some like thoughts on it. So, and they have like the piped water system that Amigos was installing. So this is the top of the well. That's their modern bathroom. Okay, so we'll come back and go through a few more of these later. Okay, here's the picture I wanted to show you. So this wall here, you know, that kind of shows you, I don't know if you can quite see, but that's like 20-foot solid rock concrete wall. So it's quite a nice compound, quite safe, and we're late, so go ahead. See you guys on Thursday.